You are now listening to the Mental Health Check-In Podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to everyone listening at whatever time you're listening. I am Joe Anthony Myrick. You may know that if you're a returning listener. If not, if you're new, that's fine. Let's be friends. And my friends call me Jan for short. And like my friends, you are cordially welcome to the Mental Health Check-In Podcast. A podcast dedicated to spreading mental health awareness as a means to help us all heal. Help you to heal, help you to heal, help him to heal, help her to heal, help them to heal, help me to heal, hopefully. I want this podcast to reach out and touch everyone it possibly can. And I manifest that we can all heal together. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can probably tell I'm going for a little change in scenery. Hope you like it. But if you're just listening, then you can focus on the more important part of the show, and that is my guest. If you've seen her on Twitter and Instagram, you know her as @Fatum_Lola. That's right, we're getting social media handles out the way early this week. You may know her as Lola Destiny. I simply call her Lola, and I'm happy to call her my friend, and I'm just as happy to call her my guest for this week. Really, I'm just as happy to say that she's happy. As you'll hear during this episode, Lola's year has been tumultuous, to say the least, for lack of a better word, because I think everyone's 2020 and somewhere or another has been tumultuous in different ways. But in the past 6 or so months, things have really turned around for her in her life. And as you hear me say a lot in this episode, I'm just happy for her. And I'm really glad that she was kind enough to stop by and share, I guess, her keys to happiness. Now, obviously, not everybody's key is going to fit everybody's door hole, pardon the metaphor, but I think every key is worth a shot at least trying, And I think she shares a lot of great advice as this key, no pun intended, I swear no pun intended, as this key example of how someone going through a rough time can turn their life around, and really so powerfully. So I hope all of you listening can take something away from this episode, especially those in a similar dark place right now that needs a little bit of convincing that there is a light waiting for them. Lola found her light, and I think listening to her will help you find yours. But first, before we get into that, I just want to provide a friendly reminder that if you do like my guest after you listen and decide you want to hear more of her, see more of her, you can follow her on social media. As you heard me say earlier, her socials is @Fatum_Lola on Instagram and Twitter. She writes, does makeup, Hollywood makeup. She does cosplay. She's a self-professed self-care goddess. What's not to like about that? And speaking of like, I encourage you, let's go with that. I encourage you to like, share, follow, and if you have enough time for it, review our podcast on all the podcasting platforms we're on, which includes, but isn't limited to, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Anchor, Breaker, literally everywhere you can get podcasts from, you can find us there. And the small stuff like sharing, following, even if sharing is just texting an episode link to one of your buddies, I think that goes a really long way in helping this podcast reach the people that it needs to reach, people who need the healing I'm always talking about, people who need the kind of guidance and advice that my guests offer every week. So please, if you can do any of that, like, share, follow, subscribe, tweet, whatever, I really appreciate it, and I think these hypothetical new listeners who you're sharing the podcast with will appreciate even more. They'll appreciate it the most, in fact. And if you're looking for updates from us, that's at Checkin' Pod on Twitter and at Checkin' Pod on Instagram. And if you have any questions, mentalhealthcheckinpod at gmail.com. Now, let's just dive right into this. How are you feeling on a physical, mental, really spiritual level these days?
Oh gosh, spiritual is a whole loaded thing, like a whole loaded thing. Um, but I mean, physically, I feel good. I mean, I've been going through some health stuff that still needs to get figured out, but I've been adjusting. I mean, I with the health stuff that I've experienced in my life, it's just a matter of taking it day by day, and the medicine really seems to help. But on the other end of the spectrum, it's just like doctors these days. I mean, amongst the pandemic and everything too, it's so frustrating because it's like it's so hard to get straight answers. I mean, that can take a toll on you, but when you wake up the next day and you're like, how am I going to tackle this day? How am I going to make something positive out of it, even when I'm kind of feeling like slow or tired physically? Um, Mentally, this is the best I've been probably within the past, God, 2014, since like 2014. Because there was a point when I was just like a young teenager or a young adult where I was just like kind of just floating along and kind of just being this mold of someone that people expected me to be as a personality. And it just like stepping away from that and that business was probably the best thing I could have ever done in the past 6 months. Just because when you are so passionate about something, you lose yourself to other people and just become this shell. And when your eyes open up to, I'm not okay, that's when you really have to change. Um, Spiritually, I it's really hard to explain because when it comes to spirituality and meditation and practices of that sort, it's a very very closed topic. I've noticed where people hide it a lot, which is fine. It's like whatever floats your boat and whatever you feel comfortable with. But I mean, I've had experiences that kind of led me up to it since I was a kid, and I was just kind of ignored it and just thought like it was all in my head. And then one day, or even like, God, 2 months ago, maybe, I was just like, okay, like I can't ignore this anymore. I have to fully embrace my spirituality and what I've experienced as a kid, because clearly it's telling me to take this certain path, which has made me a hell of a lot happier. Um, and even in the past 6 months, fight like I was so against like relationships. I would always kind of like throw up in my mouth a little bit. I was just like I would just get so mad seeing like couples in public and just be really just done with the whole affection thing because I was so like I was a hermit, like straight up. I was a hermit. Um and then I met my boyfriend through the business that I left. And he fully accepted me for who I was. And there was a point where we both were fed up and we left the business together. We made the conscious decision as a couple just to leave together. And it was honestly the best decision in our lives that we could have made individually and together. Um, but yeah, I there has been a shift in the energy, if you will, and I'm really happy.
I'm really glad to hear that. And you said a lot of things there that I really want to unpack. But first, you mentioned that you left a business. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the wrestling business? I know you used to be
Yes.
okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask why you left? We don't have to get into it if it's too
Oh
personal.
no. I won't give the negative energy to that people expect me to give. I will say this: it was a chapter in my life. I felt passionate for the first time in my life. I got into it at a very very young age, like 14, 15. Um, and when you are so wide eyed and bushy tailed, I guess is the saying, to a new world, you kind of push aside any bad that you see in it because you want to be a part of it. That really changed for me in that business in 2018 when I did Shikara and everything else, and kind of snowballed from there up until late, oh God, up until my dad got diagnosed with cancer. And it's just like stepping away and kind of evaluating really, really bad red flags and realizing what certain things affect your mental health in a profession like that. You just have to either bite your tongue and just tread along through it, or stand up for yourself and just be like, I can't do this anymore. And that was a decision I made where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And my boyfriend, he was a professional wrestler. And whenever we first met, we basically got along by the fact of talking shit about how tired we were of everything. And to find a human that was just as petty as me was really cool and didn't judge you for your thoughts or your opinions, just kind of listened and didn't talk over me or kind of dominate conversation. We could talk about hours for anything and everything. And when it came time, we were just like, we can't do this anymore in terms of the business. And we've been focusing on independent filmmaking and following our passions and lifting each other up, which really, as cliche as it is, as they make it in films and novels, it genuinely does exist.
I'm really glad that you were able to find your, I guess, kindred spirit in a way, like as far as finding
Mm-hmm.
your partner. And I'm really glad that you're able to look back on the business you loved with a very sort of, not so much a critical eye, but kind of a grateful eye. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're very, as much as it may have been hard to leave that business and all its toxicity, you're grateful that you left because you were able to spring forward into things that make you happier.
Exactly. And it's like when you're in any profession, you get so one track minded about your life and what the priorities are or what people expect you to think the priorities are to fulfill. And for a while, before I actually left, I was cutting promos for one company. And I was also working at the time before I got laid off. But trying to balance both was really, really difficult because no one would like respect your personal work life. You have to do this at this date, email, edit, cut a promo, and send it off in this short amount of time. And it's like, it's not that serious. And I don't mean that as a cut. It really isn't that serious. I mean, I know a lot of people's livelihoods depend upon that, and that's amazing that they can do that. That's what works for them. But it's genuinely, and someone put it very, very well. People want to see you succeed, but not more than them in that respected business. And at that moment where I heard that, I was like, holy shit, like you're 100% correct. And when it comes down to it, you are playing a part. And when you stop playing that part is when people stop respecting you. And another kind of phenomenal thing was the things I was terrified to stand up for. My significant other stood up for me. He didn't go along with the boys or anything like that. He was just like, listen, what you're doing here isn't right. So you either need to, pardon my French, fuck off, or handle your own business because we're not here to play this game. And that was the moment when I realized he really, really cared. And also to the point where he would get up early with me when my dad went to get chemo treatments and text me when I was sitting in the car waiting for him. Like he took his time to support me and help me through a really difficult time. And we just bonded through that. But to answer your question, all in all, it's not that serious. You can love what you do, but when you try to force it down other people's throats who either are really tired of it or want to focus on their own mental and personal health, then yeah, you have to make that choice, whether if you want to stay unhappy or if you want to break away from everything and start what should have been your life in the first place.
I'm really glad that you're able to start your life now. Do you want to share with the people what type of positivity you've been up to the last 6 months and like what you're doing to make yourself happy in your new career?
Oh man, there's a lot. This is my first podcast in probably over a year and a half. So it's like, it feels so weird to just be sitting down and talking. But I'm trying to think how to explain it because there's so much that's gone on. 6 months feels like longer than it has been due to quarantine and everything else. But I've been really focusing on spiritual beliefs and kind of following that path that I was shown as a kid. And then I was on my first indie film set doing makeup. I got my first makeup palette about 2 years ago, and I just started practicing and practicing and practicing. Um, and I was able to do makeup for an indie film that my boyfriend and his twin brother were directing and producing, Liquid Pittsburgh. And being on set is a whole different thing. It's so freeing in the fact that they respect what you do or what you're trying to learn, and they lift you times a million, be like, we trust you to do this thing, and we know you're going to kill it, and we know you're nervous, but we wouldn't have asked you here if we didn't believe in you. Working on the remote location, it was this beautiful private home on the lake. It was gorgeous. Not only was I thrilled to be working makeup on a film for the first time at 23 years old, we I and my boyfriend, we got to support each other not only on a career aspect level, but also to succeed in goals that we had talked prior. Because whenever we first met, we always talked about and joked about, well, what if we worked on set on a film one day together? And we said it just jokingly. And then it happened. We're like, all right, we see you. Like, okay, universe, we're good. We thank you. um, but yeah, I aside from makeup and doing that film, which had an amazing cast. Blair Morgan, who did the special effects, she's 17, soon to be 18, and she killed it. She gave me one of her prosthetics that she made, cast it out of gelatin, and she's so badass. Like, I want to see my on-set daughter succeed in so many things because she's really good at it. She's really good at it, and I know she's probably going to hear this, be like, "No, like you're better," and it's like, no, it's like you make. She made a whole ass like corpse herself for this film, and it's just like, I am okay at makeup, but you're next level when it comes to really driving the point home of an independent horror film. So there was a lot of bits and working pieces to the film, and she was a big part of it for sure. um, Aside from that, I've just been kind of decorating my room with like spiritual like tapestries and posters. I currently, oh gosh, I have one, two, three tapestries and one, two, three, four, five, six posters hanging. Um, and my room was like completely naked for a very long time. And I was just tired of staring at white walls. So I was like, I have to do something about this. So I just decided to start decorating with like my favorite like music posters and YouTuber posters and like a fake plant and having my little meditation space. And I'm currently creating another one. Hopefully it'll come together soon. But making your space your own where it's safe and you can get away for a little while, I think hits differently because it's your space. No one can disrespect you in your space and you can breathe. Um, and something that's really cool. Um, my boyfriend really supports my spirituality. He calls me a garden pixie just because of the way I decorate. And I'm like, I like that. So I've just been calling myself like a little garden pixie on like Twitter and social media and stuff. Um, but when you really make your space a happy space where you can focus on your passions and just sharing it with the person you love the most, it really becomes like this little home away from home.
That's really adorable. I love that nickname. And I just love like everything you're doing right now, not just opportunity wise in your career and stuff, but just what you're doing to create to make your space your own. Because I think that's something that people don't really talk about as much when people talk about self-care routines. Like it's helpful to
Mhm.
meditate and just care after yourself, but self-care is also just decorating the space around you, making your space feel like your space, a safe space, and surrounding yourself with the things that make you happy, like that's just as important as any self-care routine, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And I was so like, I have to start self care. I have to kind of, when I left one profession to kind of focus on myself, I was like, I would be like, yeah, self care, like a face mask every month or something like that. I'm like, this isn't enough. And then I really started to kind of get into spirituality and what worked for me in an eclectic way, where it's like it doesn't focus on one practice. You can kind of take bits and pieces from others and fit it to what works for you, like decorating with flowers or your favorite YouTuber posters or pretty tapestries in your favorite colors and candles. Um, I just think that when it comes to self care, people have their own way of doing it. And for me, I was just like, I have to really not only step up because I wasn't taking care of myself mentally or physically well enough, but just to have a space where I could chill out, like stream. God, what was the last thing I streamed? Like Game Grumps singing compilations on my TV and just do makeup and practice and have like a little journaling space and a meditation space. Um, and I do think that it is mentally challenging just in a way to keep you on your toes. Like if something feels off balance, to move it or change it. I guess that's called feng shui, if you will. But like it you there are no rules. If you feel the need to change something, you can change it or move it or take it away completely. Or if you're not feeling a certain song, you can just skip it or go back to the last one, or even have it on repeat. It's just one of those things where you can kind of do whatever you want and respect yourself and your brain enough to just be like, I need to breathe, get away, journal my thoughts, keep it away, store it away. Um, I just had my first Samhain on Halloween, which was really cool. Um, and it just really respecting uh, your deities and your gods and your goddesses and your recently deceased ones, and just really getting in tune with not only your personality, but your brain and your body and just the things that surround you in nature or inner and outer beauty, which is really, really important to me, just for the fact that when I was a kid, I would always listen to or purchase these Warped Tour compilation CDs. If you're a true emo kid, you know what I'm talking about in the days of the CDs where you go specifically to like Target or FYE, and then you would like scan the CDs and like listen to the tracks before you bought the CD. Like those were the days. Those were the legit days. And I would I forgot, I think it's like the 2013 Warped Tour compilation. I could be wrong. I have them sitting in like a box somewhere in my closet along with like my old Britney CDs. But like there was a song by Set Your Goals, and Gaia was in the title. And every time I would listen to the CD or that song specifically on that, it would skip. But I was always drawn to go back to that song. And it, like, I checked the CD the other day and it still does that. And it was always in the back of my mind. And a lot of people say, like, when it comes to choosing your deity or something, a god or goddess that draws you in the most, that was my first choice, just because of the experience that I had as a kid. And when you feel this connection with your inner self or the things around you, is really when you start to, and this is going to sound cheesy, I guess, but that's when you really and truly start to heal, is when you finally focus on your core and who you are as a person, or how you view yourself from other perspectives. And I always thought when Jimmy Jacobs said that, it was weird. But then I was like, holy shit, like Jimmy Jacobs knows his shit about this. So shout out to Jimmy Jacobs for kind of getting the ball rolling, I guess, per se. If you could, I don't, he probably wouldn't want to take the credit, but I'm going to give him a little bit of the credit on that one. But he really kind of opened my eyes, and I guess it was a sign in a way to be like, hey, we're right here, like get your shit together. And then I just finally started to get my shit together.
And I'm really glad you got your shit together, for lack of a better term.
Thank you. Like there's no other way, like it's like get your shit together.
And like in getting your shit together, like it seems like in the last 6 months you've really become very enlightened. The more that I hear you talk, it's very self-reflective, and I really love that about you. Like it's, and like I never even thought about it from that perspective, not just with what Jimmy Jacobs said, but as far as like trying to see yourself through the eyes of other people. So I guess before anything else, I'm kind of curious when, well, I know it's just the last 6 months you've been focusing on all of this, but how would you know what to do as far as self-care? Because self-care is very much like a trial and error type of thing. How would you decide you want to do this spiritually, this mentally, this is going to be my self-care routine? How would you go about that?
Like you said, it was honestly trial and error for a really long time, especially when it comes to like your skin and your body. Because they're like, I was heavily, like, more so now in the past year or 6 months to a year. Um, but before, I was like getting like random face masks from like Five Below and seeing what worked and like getting these little items to try. Um, and that was just me kind of being like, okay, I'm finally going to bite the bullet because my skin was horrible. Um, and then I kind of got away from face masks for a little bit, and then I was kind of like didn't really mess with it. And then over the past year, or most recently 6 months, it always comes back to that 6 months. But like I had this, not necessarily like aha moment, and not even one of those like curious like I'm gonna Google how to do this. It just, and this is gonna sound weird, and I some people will get it. You just have this feeling or nudge where you're like, this is exactly what works for me, and I have to dedicate myself to trying this. For example, a lot of like facial serums from like ColourPop, uh, and right now I'm actually drinking aloe water with like Fuji apple and pear, and it's just like the things that make your body feel good. You kind of have to listen to, and you can't ignore it, because when you, like, for example, if I'm feeling good and I decide I'm going to eat all this junk food, my body feels like shit afterwards. I'm like, okay, I got to be healthy. I can't do this right now. I have to kind of like recoup. And even mentally, when I've kind of gotten away from Twitter a little bit, in the sense that I used to heavily rely on, and you know this, when we first started interacting, I used to heavily rely on Twitter. um, and it still blows my mind that I somehow managed to get 4,000 followers with all the BS that I posted and all like the shit posting. Um, but it just, and um, when I got into my relationship unexpectedly, and it's the best thing that could have ever happened in my life. Um, I just got away from Twitter because I was just like, I don't need this anymore. And when I get on, I'll share a couple of things, and then I log on private, and then I sign up. But it just like, you listen to the things that makes you feel good about yourself and your brain and your body. um, Stepping away from things when you get a bad vibe, that is one thing that I've always kind of been in tune with. If I get a bad vibe from someone, I either get myself out of that situation, or just kind of see how to gauge the situation. And more so now, I've become more intuitive just with meditation and journaling, where it's just like, if something is bad, you get away immediately. Um, I know that sounds weird, but that's like the best way I could put it into words.
No, I think you're onto something there. Like I feel like, and like it's hard to like get that vibe, but a lot of times that vibe, or for me, it's like a feeling in your, literally in my gut or in my stomach, that's telling
Mm-hmm.
me that something's not right. And like it sounds silly to say that out loud, but when that feeling happens, like it usually ends up not being right. Like I don't know where that feeling
Exactly.
comes. Yeah, I don't know where that feeling comes from, but it's very much something that I think it's important to listen to if you have it.
Exactly. And for the longest time, even when I got those feelings, like as a teenager or up until I turned 20, I would always be like, well, I was always the person that if I got a bad vibe from someone and they did me wrong, I give them another chance. And then I just got to a point when I turned 21, 22. I'm like, can I swear more on this? Is this okay?
Go ahead.
At that point, I was just like, fuck this. It's like, I have to start doing things for myself, whether people like it or not. Um, and one thing that was just kind of um, made me and my significant other click is we both had the same mindset, because I would tell someone something and they would think it was weird. But when I told him the same things I would tell other people, he immediately was like, I get it 100%. Like, he has the same, and we joke about this a lot. We have the same brainwave, in the sense that we can look at each other or go unspoken or talk about certain subjects, and we just get it, because we're both very, very uh, strong people, but stronger together, in the sense that things that I was afraid to stand up for myself, he would stand up for me when things weren't right. Or if I was ever down on myself about makeup or anything, he would 100% or past 100% support me and encourage me when I needed it the most. And he still does. And I just think it's important that when you kind of find that, I'm trying to think how to say it, when you find the starting point of what your life should have been in the first place, you also realize you have to wait and get past so much shit to get to that true starting point in your life.
Yeah, and I think to piggyback off that, I also want to say that when you feel like something's off or just see that something's off, you actually see like red flags. It's important to get out there just because like I'm starting to learn that you can't, well, first off, you, as far as just the self, you're only going to have yourself as far as like
Mm-hmm.
your thoughts, and you have to live with your thoughts. And like if you stay in a situation that doesn't feel comfortable, even if you can't really peg why it feels uncomfortable, and
Yeah.
you're actively trying to make someone else comfortable, it doesn't work out just because, like, let's say that you're right about those feelings and you stay in that situation, you end up making this other person or other people feel comfortable, and it ends up not working out, and you kind of just wasted your time, you know?
Oh
You end
yeah.
up
And there's many of times where that exact situation.
Yeah, and not only do you end up wasting your time, it's mentally exhausting trying to make someone else feel comfortable when you yourself is not comfortable. And the best thing to do for your own mental health is just to get out of that situation as soon as you see red flags or just feel something that just doesn't feel right, I think.
Yeah, and it's like it's one of those things that you can never get that wasted time back, but you can learn from it and improve and make your life better no matter how shitty the situation is. And for the longest time, I was one of those people where like I constantly blame myself. And it just like I got tired of it because it was draining and exhausting. And once you realize like I can't do this anymore, and you start to physically gain your strength back, I think that is the first point where you can really not turn it around, but become better from it.
hmm And to piggyback off that again, like when you're in situations like, well, when I'm in situations like that, it's kind of, it feels like you're being gaslit where you're
Mm-hmm.
constantly feeling like something's off, but people around you are either trying to convince you otherwise or make you think you're crazy. And that's a whole
Mm-hmm.
nother exhausting facet to it that's just weighs down on you mentally.
Exactly that. And when it comes to that specific situation, people who try to take advantage of situations like that, it truly shows when it it shows their character in the sense that that's not a person you want to be associated with or around or even kind of even have in your life, because I dealt with a lot of that going back to when I was a young kid. And you kind of think that you're going crazy, but when you finally realize like this isn't how things are, I have the not power, but I have the kind of um I'm trying to think how to word it. Basically, it's like you have an opportunity to change that and turn the narrative around where you can truly show other people's colors, um, and who they really are, while kind of getting some strength from it, and the fact knowing that you weren't crazy after all, I guess.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because, like, even if you can't see someone else's true colors and it's just a gut feeling or just a situation that just feels too familiar, you know your own thought process, you know where your heart lies, and if where your heart lies doesn't lie where this other person is or these other people, and like something's just not clicking, that's when you kind of have to just push away sounds like a strong word, but push away. Like that's when you
Hmm.
need to just secure your space, secure your safe space, and remove the things that's mentally exhausting you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and when I mean, it's a really difficult process too. Even if you're in your teens or your 20s or 30s or even past that, it's just like it's kind of self-evaluating is a really really hard thing to do. It took me forever to kind of self-evaluate and realize like there's certain things in my life that I just can't keep in anymore. There's certain things that you go through that really really hurt, but you have to evaluate in the sense that how did you react at that time, and how have you become better from another person's hurt or faults that kind of negatively affect you. um, and it a lot of people think that it'll just take a day or minutes or seconds, and it doesn't. It's a you know year long process or even longer. Or if you bury so much shit that you go through and you have all that to unpack, it's just like, okay, where do you start, and how do you want to become a better adult or person than this person that hurt you? And not better in the sense of high and mighty, better in the sense of treating people the way that you want to be treated, or extending the courtesy to people who deserve it, or earn that trust, I guess.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. That definitely makes sense. And I think, again, it's a very great self reflective way to look at it. Like, if you can't change the people around you, then the least you can do is not change yourself, but strive to be a better person than the people who
Mm-hmm.
hurt you. I think that's a really powerful sentiment.
um and it's weird, I never considered myself I'm n- not like a guru by any means, but in the sense that I never thought I would have that moment of self growth, or have that power of having such a supportive strong um, person in my life who has gone through similar things. Or you don't have to feel like you have to explain yourself, or feel like that they're against you or don't want to see you succeed, to find a person who not only can understand your level of weird that you hide from other people, that you can truly be yourself around. And kind of one thing I'm constantly saying is, for the longest time, one thing that is kind of was weird to do but made sense to do. For the longest time, I was going by Lola Bradbury on my Twitter and a lot of other things. And that just, it really kind of hit home that after the stuff with Shakara happened, when all that stuff went down, I was just like, I can't, so much bad has happened with under this moniker or this personality. Like, I can't have it anymore. I can't physically accept it and not be sick. Um, and then I was just like, I have to change this. I have to really start my life the way it should have been. And obviously, things do happen for a reason, and timing happens for a reason. But that's why I changed my whole social media status to um, the Greek, or yeah, the Latin word for destiny and strength. Not only because it's cute to go in with the whole relationship thing, because it truly made sense to do it. Um, and I remember after I changed it, I asked my significant other, I was like, "Are you good? Like, you don't think this is weird, right?" And he was like, "No, I love it. Keep it." I'm like, "Oh, thank God." like, like it was a big thing for me to do, because I was essentially closing the book on Lola Bradbury and becoming my own person for the first time since 2015.
I think that's really powerful. Just the idea of just reshaping yourself, because I don't think anyone should subscribe to the idea of they need to be a certain type of personality or idea forever. Like everybody, you're supposed to be in a constant state of change. And you're supposed to change doesn't always come naturally, or it doesn't necessarily have to be. I think change is very much a decision where you decide, I want to be XYZ and I'm going to take the steps to be XYZ. And you've taken those steps, and I'm really proud of you for taking those steps.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, like, I'm getting like that, like, inside your chest clenching feeling just talking about it, just kind of reflecting on that moment where I was just like, I can't do this. Um, and it's kind of funny, but kind of not, where after I completely got rid of, the Bradbury thing, like, it will always have a special place in my heart for the good memories it made for me. I remember when I changed the name, I went through my photo book in my closet, and I just did this full negative energy cleanse and burn of all the things that hurt me from those two places. Um, because my photo book was buried away in another room, and it hurt. I was just like, I gotta do this because I know it's sitting here and I know it's in it, and I have to just burn the photos and burn the moments that don't serve me any purpose anymore, or because I held onto those for so long because it meant a lot to me. But at a certain point, it just didn't feel right. That gut feeling where it's like you have to get rid of this energy and cleanse yourself to start over. Like, I burned stuff with like sage and rosemary and the whole nine. Um, and I mean, I it's something I believe in, um, but it's not. There's a lot of practice with different herbs and flowers and stuff, which I'm dabbling in a little bit myself over the past week and a half. But like, it's not only the power in what the books say, it's the power in what you put out into the universe and what you get back from the universe, accepting you get slowly guided along the path of, when you put out positive, you get it back. When you put out respect, you get it back. And after that cleanse, I it felt like a whole ass building was lifted off my shoulders. I was like, thank God this is done. I can focus. I can move on. But in that respect, it's not disrespectful to other people when you do that for yourself. It's respecting yourself enough to not hold on to something that isn't good for you.
I 100% agree. And I really like that sentiment of burning sage to just cleanse yourself of just everything that you're not comfortable attaching to yourself anymore. I think it's very much like how Phoenix rises through the ashes. Like, things need
Mhm.
to get burned to get reborn, you know?
Yeah, and it was funny. Uh, I got reminded of a social media post on like, on this day in this year thing. Like, you know what I'm
Mhm.
talking about.
Yeah.
And I kind of I looked at it for a second, but I didn't click on it because it's like, I'm not the same person I was in those photos. And there's no point in looking at myself at that point in my life and going, well, what could have been? Because what could have been played out its course to the point where it showed what things were really like. And I'm truly grateful that I can just be Lola, or just be the version of Lola I was kind of pushing behind myself to be, this on-screen personality, or this Renee Young type. And that's not a hit on Renee Young at all. I respect her and I love her to death. But that was who I was constantly compared to at that point in my life, where, you know, you're like a female Mean Gene, or like you're a Renee Young, or anything like that. It's like, when people compare you to someone else, they're not respecting the work you put in. They're respecting the work that they expect you to put in from another person that they've seen or expect you to be. Um, and I think that when people get compared to someone else, you can take it as a respectful thing, like, oh yeah, that person's a legend, oh my god, thank you. Or, which, that's how I took it in stride at the time. But once it constantly became a thing nonstop, I was just like, okay, I'm not that person. I put in my work and my time to do this thing for you, but I'm getting kind of buried in a shadow of someone else. I just think that shadows can weigh really heavily on people, but once you have a light to kind of, once the light clicks inside your brain, or when the light physically comes into your life in another person, you just realize like nothing mattered before that point, you know.
I 100% agree with you. I feel like stuff like that kind of invalidates the person that you are, or invalidates the person you're becoming. These comparisons and shadows, and people just need to let people be people. Like, you don't need to be the next Renee Young. You never need to be. You just need to be the first Lola. And as the first Lola, you've done a phenomenal job, I think.
I'm trying. Like, I just think that it is important for anything you do to not, I mean, it's easier said than done, and it takes a long time to realize, but like, don't let other people's shadows weigh you down. You kind of create your own way, and don't let other people shame you for exploring passions or practicing makeup in the mirror for like 3 hours, which I've done a lot recently. I just got like a whole ass makeup Walmart discount Halloween haul yesterday. So it's just like, that's going to be more of the things I'm doing once I get all this cleaning done.
You mentioned the makeup. I'm curious, how did you get into makeup and prosthetics and whatnot?
Oh God. So I don't want people coming at me and attacking me for this, because like I could care less. Like, so I remember, and this person showed themselves to be a shitty person, but as a teenager, like a lot of things don't come to light as what it does years later. So I remember when I was first getting into my like true middle school, high school emo phase, I would always go to Hot Topic back when it was good. I mean, it's still okay, but back when, again, when Hot Topic had like the CD scanners that you could like put on the headphones and like listen to like people screaming in your ears for like an hour and no one would bother you. Like, and they had like multiple setups. Like, this is back when Hot Topic was like decent. Back when it's like you could go to the mall and that's the only store you would spend time in and then go home. Um, and I spent many hours doing exactly that, but that's besides the point. But that was my local Hot Topic. And another city over, I would always go into the Hot Topic because people were just really nice. But I remember that's where I could find uh, different views of the industry, music, art, culture, that sort of thing. And I remember I bought my first alternative press magazine, and I forget who was on the cover. Oh God, it's like it was like a Warped Tour edition, like 2008 or 2009 or around that time. Um, and I got home and I would flip through the pages, and I see this bright hot pink hair, bright hot pink eyebrow Jeffree Star back when he was doing Warped Tour, before all this stuff came to light. That he's a horrible person. And just to be clear, I don't support it now. Like, I'll still keep the lipstick because it's good lipstick, but I won't openly be like, "Hey, buy this brand," because it's like I'm not gonna throw away like $50 lipstick, you know. Um, because that's good shit. Like, you could use it for eyeliner. It's very versatile, but that's besides the point. I just remember seeing him with bright pink hair, bright pink eyebrows, and being completely different from anything that I ever seen when I was a kid. And I remember there's a whole phase that I begged my mom to let me dye my hair hot pink because of Jeffree Star. But I just saw that, and I was like, when I get older, I kind of want to do something like that, not to replicate it, but to make it my own. And I remember the first makeup palette I got, and I still have the exact palette like two or 3 years later sitting right in front of me right now. It was a cheap Amazon Shani rainbow palette, like super basic, like some shimmers, but mostly like matte rainbow colors. And I remember the worst thing I'd ever done with it is I did bright red eyeshadow and like red under my waterline, and it looked like I'd done crack or something. Like, it looked horrible in Cracker Barrel lighting. Like, I remember vividly, like, it looked horrible. um, but just the fact that I just wanted to practice and play with colors. Um, And I think I got the palette before I turned 21, because I remember using the same palette for my makeup that year. Um, but then I just kind of, and this surprises a lot of people, like with my technique and stuff, I just watch a lot of YouTube videos, you know, and I study like what works for my facial structure. Like it's hard to figure out your facial structure to begin with, but when you just sit and watch, like, and this is also going to sound weird, but a lot of my makeup practice is based around the techniques of drag queens, because some of them have chubby faces like me, and I can just kind of see what works. A lot of my influences are like Bailey Sarian, Trixie Mattel, God, who else? Kimchi, like a lot of those drag queens, because they fucking rule, number one. And number two, their techniques work uh, the most versatile for facial structure. And I just wanted to practice. Um, and I guess I'm pretty decent at doing my makeup. Like I'm really proud of myself for doing the Batwing eyeliner before Halloween. I think that's my best one yet, honestly. And then, um, because it was funny, whenever I got the makeup gig for the independent film that my brother and my brother, I can't even talk, my boyfriend and his twin brother were directing and producing, they were like, well, we know you do makeup. Like, you want to do it for like the main title character? And I got the call from my boyfriend when I was shopping in Walmart. So I'm like, I'm having like a massive heart attack calling him back. I'm like, what's going on? Like, I was in like kind of panic because I was worried, but I was like, what's going on? Like, like just talk to me. And he was like, well, I'm gonna be, in town to do this film, and like one, I want to see you, and two, like, I know you do makeup. He's like, do you want to do makeup for the main title character? I'm like, first of all, my first reaction was like, are you sure you want to do that? Like, I want to see you. Like, don't get me wrong, but like, are you sure you want to do that to your film crew? And he was like, yeah. Like, he's like, I support you, and I know you do good shit. And I was like, okay, just give me the location and the dates, and I'll be there. Um, and then when I got on set, I still have the makeup in my little kit that I took on set with me, but I just I studied the makeup look I did off a YouTube video, and I just applied it to the facial structure of the main title character guy. And I remember the thing that I got told the most on set, besides asking if me and my boyfriend were an actual couple or not, was, you gave me fucking nightmares with that makeup. And I was like, oh, hey, I was like, I'm not sorry, I'll take it. Like, too bad about your nightmares. Like, I did that.
I'm really, that's so cool that you're able to like live your dreams like that and just manifest into something cool like that. I'm so happy for you and proud of you, really.
Thank you. It was basically the whole time on set, my boyfriend and I, because we have this dynamic where we are a badass couple and we are like a smoking couple. I'm just gonna throw that out there. But like, we have this dynamic where we can be a couple but be professional in a professional setting and lift and bring each other back down to earth. Um, and I just remember the first thing that happened on set is I rode with my boyfriend and his twin brother to set, and I got out of the same car as them, and people were kind of looking at me and like kind of looking at my boyfriend, but they didn't put two and two together. And then later into filming, they were like, "You're his girlfriend." I'm like, really? It took you this long to notice? Like, I know I'm small and everything, but it took you this long to notice? Like, how long does it take you to put a puzzle together? Like, I was genuinely concerned for their like IQ status.
Oh, that's really funny. That actually, like, now that you mention it, I'm kind of curious. Like, when you started dating your boyfriend, like, what told you that this was something different? Like, for anyone like trying to find that person, or like, what does it feel like to find that person?
I I had a lot of bad prior experiences just with trying to, not really like close to dating, but stuff would just get in the way, or people would turn out to be bad people. Um, I haven't dated since 2015, 2016. Um, with just a bad mentally abusive relationship at that time as a teenager. And it took me a long time to kind of heal from and kind of grow from. But I wasn't looking. I was that person that I would throw up if I saw like people kissing in a movie, or look away, or just leave the room. Or if I'd see a couple out in public, I just get angry with myself for not being able to have that sort of thing. And I will, like, my boyfriend separately wasn't actively looking either, and I wasn't actively looking. But before we left wrestling, we ended up working for this one company at the same time, right? And the first time we actually met, he had seen my previous business work for another company. And he was like, hey, like, just before we even started like talking or really got to know each other, he was like, hey, like, can you cut a promo for this company and I will show it to them? Uh, and I was like, huh? Wait, what are you, what is this? Because I thought it was a prank at first, because a lot of local people like to do like the gags or whatever. And he was like, well, we have a lot of mutual friends. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And then I cut the promo. And like from then on, I just remember the returning point, I guess, for that is he goes, I don't give anyone my personal cell phone number, but I'm going to make an exception for you. And then like we would text like once a day, and that was it. Cause I was like, okay, like business, whatever. And then when my promo got aired in that company, shit blew up. And he called me and he goes, when I answered the phone, he goes, hey, babe. And I kind of froze. And I was like, well, maybe like this is just a nickname he calls girls, like whatever. You know, I was being kind of like pessimistic about it. I'm like, okay, like don't read into it. And then it just kind of snowballed into us looking for reasons to talk to each other and just say, hey, I have a question about a promo, or I'm going to help you with a promo. You know, we just started looking for excuses to talk to each other. And the first phone call conversation, I remember, neither one of us wanted to hang up. We kept talking and talking and talking. And it was just like, oh, like this person like seems pretty okay. Like they don't seem like a total psychopath or douchebag, you know. No offense, because at the time, like I was just so like self-protective of myself. Um, and we just started looking for reasons to talk to each other. And I remember the one night I sat outside and we just talked, and we got on a personal level that night. And I was like, I don't want to screw this up, but I really like this person. And then the rest is history, I guess, where he would always tell me stories about his travels and work with George Romero. And like, I was just astounded. I was like, this person thinks I'm a cool person, or like deals with my bullshit and still continues to. I was like, all right, he's not bad. And I just remember we had after a month or two, we'd started acting like boyfriend and girlfriend because he got super protective and wanted to watch out and have my back. And no one else has ever had my back or ever protected me in the way that he does. No one has shown me that amount of care or gratitude or respect ever in my life. And I just remember the one night I I was like, how do I bring this up to him? Like, how do I say, like, hey, like, you're kind of acting like my boyfriend. Like, I'm not complaining, but like, how do I bring this up? And then when I said it, he was like, yeah. And then 6 months later, or 4 months later at that point, it's just like, yeah, like he's my person. He supports me and we support each other. And creatively we lift each other and we support each other no matter what. And with my invisible illnesses and chronic illnesses, he doesn't treat me like a different person. He doesn't try to baby me. He sees me as the strong woman that does have to deal with certain things that he does not fault or blame me for, or kind of gets freaked out by. But this is gonna sound dumb, and he's gonna hear this and he's gonna like chuckle or like be like embarrassed or something. But like he's like a man. Like, he owns up to his own shit, he handles his own shit, and he supports me. And it's just like, I can't see anyone else in my life but him, and I wouldn't have it any other way, honestly.
I'm so happy for the both of you. That just sounds like the most adorable thing, and I'm just stuff like that is so hard to come by. And I, for anyone listening, I just hope and manifest that you can have a relationship just half as good as what Lola and your partner has. Like that just sounds really adorable. I'm so happy for you. I can't stop saying that.
My
It
face
just
is all red
sounds
just talking about it. But it's neither one of us were genuinely looking. And I remember the first conversation, I had sent him a message or something, and he called me out and he was like, "You're totally a bot. Prove me wrong." And we have this running gag where, like, we uh because of the pandemic and stuff, we only dated and had a relationship through like FaceTime or Skype or texting or phone, and we hadn't seen each other in person. And um, the first time we actually saw each other in person was when we were both on that movie set for the first time in 6 months. And it was difficult. I mean, it wasn't difficult in the sense we both had the same vibe and same energy to put in the relationship to support and care about one another. So it wasn't really difficult to just maintain a relationship that way during the pandemic. But it was totally worth it because, yes, it might be hard not to in person see someone, but all the time leading up to physically seeing them in person is worth it. And it just shows that when you manifest positivity and care and get that back from another person tenfold, it's worth it, just because no matter pandemic or distance or anything like that, it's like you can make it work. It's just you have to have the positive mindset and same energy matching your partner, I guess. If that makes sense.
yeah, it totally makes sense. I think you hit the nail on something right there. Even though you didn't like actively say it. What I gather from what you just said is that it's very important to put the work in, basically, because like you said, like while you two were actively a couple, that's when the pandemic hit. So for five,
Mm-hmm.
6 months, it was just y'all FaceTiming until the film set meeting happened. And not I'm not sure a lot of people would commit like that. That's a demanding commitment to date someone and only be able to see them through video calls and FaceTimes. That's hard to work out for a lot of people. But the fact that you both really went out of your way to put in the work to make it work, I think that not only says a lot about you both and how much you love and care for each other, but just it says a lot about what it takes to strengthen a relationship. You gotta put the work in.
Yeah, and up until the point where we met each other, it's just like I wasn't getting that energy from anyone, and not in a comparison way. It's I hadn't experienced that from anybody else. It was the sense of we had prior to that. It was this unspoken trust that he, in a way, would always be there for me when I would call him, or if I was upset, like if I was upset about trying to get this promo done, I called him on the phone, just crying, and he was there for me. He picked up the phone no matter what. If I called to make excuses to talk to him, or like, hey, I have a question about this promo, which ended up just being like a 4 hour long conversation. But up until that point, we just established this unspoken trust and commitment that we would always be there when we're any like either of us called or texted or just needed to be there for one another. And I just think that it takes a lot of mental strength, but when you have that unspoken reassurance that this person cares and will be there for you, I think that was the point where I was just like, I know this will work. And he, like him having the same or kind of similar feeling. Um, and the biggest thing about that too is among like more so in a pandemic, there's so much chaos and so much um, mental health doubt or self doubt, or just because you're locked in your house aside from going out to get groceries. So you kind of get in your own head with everything. But when the person that shows that they care about you, hushes that voice inside your brain, I think that in itself is a sign where just like, this is your person.
I 100% agree with that. I think that's important to strengthen romances, friendships, just general
Mm-hmm.
relationships. And I never really thought of like the silver lining of the pandemic, I guess. Like it's obviously been a horrible thing, like terrible things has happened during the pandemic.
If you want to
But
date, wait till a pandemic. That's the true test. The moral of the story. Moral of the story.
absolutely. Yeah, it's weird when you think about it, how there can be a silver lining like that, how like it takes something so grand and scary and strange to really highlight how strong a relationship is, the fact that you can put the work in when so many obstacles are against the work, does that make sense?
Yeah, and at that point, I knew inside of me that I had strength and dedication to show to a person that gave it back to me in return, or I knew what I knew what I was looking for, and when I would actively try, it just wasn't working, and I wasn't looking, and all of a sudden, like, prove to me that you're not a bot. That of all things, that and his prop severed head, those were like the two, like, yes, yes, check off. Um, but just I just think that it's important to realize that this pandemic fucking sucks. Like, there's so much weird shit going on. And even during the election, 2020 is just, or past January, February, from then on, it's just weird and really, really, it's sometimes depressing. And there seems like there's no hope, or it seems like this endless loop of like nothingness. That the pandemic is truly the time when I started to really self reflect and start these practices, and meet my soulmate, essentially, because I was putting out this energy into the universe and gratitude to the universe, and still do, um, to have that guidance and have that inner strength to just try to make every day for the past 6 months positive and happy, and just lift each other up and not focus on, social media clout, or anything like that. I mean, sure, like, I'm guilty. Like, I thought it was so dumb to post pictures of your significant other, but I'm like, we are totally that couple of words. Like, if we're proud of one another, we're like, hey, I'm proud of you, damn it. um but like, there was a point where I was like, bitch, I love you. And then he was like, I know. I was like, all right. Like, I can just say the dumbest shit. And he's just like, that's my girlfriend. Or I can post the dumbest shit about, like, yesterday I posted about, there's a melon called the kiwano. And I was so tired yesterday. I called it the Keanu melon. And he'll just see me post dumb shit like that. He's like, that's my girlfriend.
Again, that's so adorable. I keep saying adorable, but what y'all have is so adorable. And I think you nailed on something really important again that's worth pointing out. It's all about just building positivity, and positive things will come for you even if you don't look for it. Like as the saying goes, if you build it, they will come. And you've both privately and publicly, you've gone out of your way to create positive space and just bring positivity in the world, and now positivity is coming your way. And I hope people listening take that away from this conversation.
Yeah, I think if you're actively trying to search or actively trying to change and it feels unnatural, you'll only dig the hole deeper. When you stop looking and start really kind of, um, going along with the flow of what makes sense for you, is when you really kind of, like, you don't have to meditate, or it's different for every person. But for me, the point of change was, you know 6 months ago, where it was just like, I finally had that little sliver of light and something to look forward to every day, with like a morning text or anything like that. It was just that little sliver, which led me to kind of explore inner love, but also outer beauty, in the sense that, find the good shit that you like to make you happy. Like, if you see depressing stuff on Twitter, get off Twitter, or text your significant other or your parents, or something like a dumb, funny, supportive meme like I do. Totally guilty of. But it's just like, find the positive things that work for you. Don't try to force something upon yourself if you don't feel ready or if it doesn't feel right. Um, and like my whole, I'm guilty because I've been working on crafting uh, a box for our 6 month anniversary, which I feel totally evil with so much like packing tape and hidden stuff. Like I'm very proud of myself. Like, I never considered myself a crafty person up until I met my boyfriend, because he's so creative and so intelligent, because he was George Romero's assistant for like 8 years. um, but like, he inspires me and lifts me creatively. I haven't created something handmade myself since maybe fifth grade, and that was for my parents. I haven't really done any crafting between then and now, and he inspired me to, like, here, I made this for you, kind of deal. But I'm just very, very uh, a lot of doors have opened in my creative brain, and just being guided towards the creative path of like, hey, try this, or the end result of being really proud of something that you yourself made. Like, I have a drawer full of like flowers. I'll probably be making like more facial toners and stuff. um, but I am just genuinely like really excited for what the future holds. And like, the whole thing is like meditation or journaling or doing makeup for a couple hours, or just sitting upstairs and watching like Game Grumps or Jacksepticeye or Markiplier or Unisonus, and just chilling and turning your brain off.
You made a really good point, and I 100% agree with it. And I actually think that might be a good place to end this. I'm sorry if this was longer than you really planned. Usually these are like
No.
45 minutes. But yeah, I thank you for coming on. And before we end, I want to say that, like, well, first, I have a segment that I like to end on every episode. I call it Giving People Their Flowers, where I just tell people just how much I appreciate them in case we never speak again or anything like that. And I appreciate you just as, like, just an online friend, man. Like, the concept of an online friend was always kind of strange to me, maybe a little foreign.
Right.
And like, but then like we kind of met through the when I used to run the Daily DET account back when I was
Oh yeah, those were
yeah,
the days.
yes,
The young baby Lola days.
yes. Sounds like feels like forever ago, but like
It does.
we were talking through there. You were just asked, like, you politely asked, like, can you retweet this for me, or can you retweet this promo for this
My
company,
dumb
this.
wrestling tweets and
Hey, it worked out, and it helped getting us talking. And then when I end up leaving the
yeah.
AT and we both kind of end up leaving the wrestling business, ironically, around the same time, funny enough,
Mm-hmm.
we kind of just kept talking through the personal accounts. And you've been a great friend and confidant for me. You've even like helped me with this podcast in a lot of ways. Like, you've helped me like find a way to reach out to people, and that's helped get the ball going for a live episode. So I appreciate you for just being a guiding light when I need it. And I hope I've been that guiding light in a way for you. And I just thank you for just bringing positivity not only towards me, but just into the world. Like we keep saying, like it's important to bring out positivity, not just because you want the energy that you give back into the world, but just you've done so much positivity as far as your timeline, your tweets, your Instagrams, and I'm I feel honored to know you, if that makes sense. And
No,
I
I that means a lot. It's whenever I left podcasting, when you were like, "Hey, can you give me advice?" I was like, "It's the least I can do because I've known you for a handful of years now, and it's just like, I'm not going to do this anymore. So the least I can do is pass on my wisdom to someone I know will make good use of it and respect and follow what makes them happy and what makes their podcast work for them and other people." So I was just like, I trust this person the most to give them this information, because people have like tweeted me before and asking, and they don't put it to use, so it just kind of wasted. But I like, you were so dedicated and so honest. Like, I don't know what to do. What do I do? I was just like, if you have any questions, just hit me up. But like, here is the guideline. Like, don't follow a specific list. Do what feels right for you, and just go with the vibe of what positivity you want your podcast to capture, I guess. But yeah, like you've always been really cool, and like with the wrestling stuff too, because it's good to have people when you leave a certain thing to kind of have a confidant in that inner circle of people that you know like talking to, or like glad to answer any questions.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you doing that for me. And I appreciate the kind words right there. That really warms my heart. And I thank you for that. And I thank you for coming on this podcast.
Thank you for having me, listening to me ramble about spiritual stuff and relationship stuff and